Welcome to the History of the Bow series here on the Push Podcast. In this series, we are engaging with subject matter experts from around the world to better understand the role of the bow and arrow and how it shaped the human race. We'll chat with archaeologists to anthropologists and PhDs at the finest universities to modern historians of this beautiful weapon. We'll jump around through history from the earliest humans using a bow to the Bronze Age, from the Iron Age to the medieval times, from the Golden Age of the European longbow to the widespread use of the weapon by Native Americans. And finally, how the introduction of gunpowder transformed this weapon to become an iconic tool for the modern traditional bow hunter and the earliest pioneers of our sport. Listen in as we build out the history of the bow and arrow with the help of the greatest minds and historians from around the world. This is the history of the bow. Get primal. All right, everybody, welcome back to another History of the Bow video cast here on the Push Podcast platform. Let's bring our guest on, our resident traditional bow hunting historian, Gene Hopkins. Brother, what's going on, man?
It's a great day. Just got back from Saskatchewan on a black bear hunt.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, lots of bears, but, bears did their job. I didn't do my job. No bear on this trip.
No bear on this. Did you get into some bears, though?
Got it. Yeah, some nice bears.
Awesome.
That's my first trip to Saskatchewan for bear. I've hunted bear all over Ontario and Alaska and Idaho and places, but my first trip to Saskatchewan, I'd always heard so much about the bear in Saskatchewan. Lots of bear, big bear, collar-phased bear. And boy, I tell you, from my first trip, I will be back.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. Did you go up there with any friends or anything, or was it solo?
Yeah, there was one of my friends from here in Columbus, Dave Willoughby, went. We've been hunting partners for, believe it or not, over 60 years.
Oh, wow.
And Dan Halcomb from just west of Indianapolis, Eric Berner from Illinois. We had a good crew.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Well, you'll be back. It sounds like it was a good trip. That's great.
We had a great trip.
So today, History of the Bow, we're moving on in our timeline. Our first full episode was on the Thompson brothers. And Gene, I don't know about you, but I am getting hammered with feedback on that series.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I hope it's positive feedback.
It's all good feedback. They're saying, can you find another historian?
Yeah, right. I like the subject, but that guy?
Yeah.
Work on that.
Yeah, it's all good and positive feedback, and everyone is itching to get into these next couple episodes and everything. I think people are really itching to hear about Ishi and Pope and Young, and it's going to be great.
Yeah. Well, also 2 weekends ago, we had the Archery Hall of Fame induction ceremonies.
Yes, how'd that go?
Missouri. It went great. If people have not been to the Archery Hall of Fame inductions, they only happen every 2 years. They happen in Springfield, Missouri at the Bass Pro flagship complex there. And it's just a great weekend. Come and hang out with some of the people that you might have read about or read their stories or seen them here or there. But not just the celebrities, but also the people that come. It's just a fantastic time. Everybody has a wonderful time. And the museum there on site at the Bass Pro Complex. You got the Archery Hall of Fame Museum. You've got the Firearms Museum. They got a fly fishing museum. You can spend a week there.
Oh, yeah, it sounds like it. Did you post any pictures? I was looking on your Instagram here. I was going to pull it up for the video cast.
I can't. I flew straight out of Springfield to go to Saskatchewan. And
oh, okay.
I haven't. I've only been home for 48 hours.
Oh, no, and then you're hopping on this to do this with me. That's great.
I'm a little behind in my tasks.
Yes.
Compton Rendezvous is coming up in a couple of weeks in Noblesville, Indiana.
Yeah, that's mid-June, right?
Yeah, June 18 to 21. And, again, the Rendezvous, if you've been before, it's in a new location this year. Please don't go back to Berrien Springs. We will not be there. we will be in Noblesville, Indiana, just on the north side of Indianapolis. And it's going to be fantastic. The new facility is going to be amazing. More of a family atmosphere. We've got canoe, kayak rentals, some of the best smallmouth fishing in the state of Indiana on
Dang.
the White River there, horseback riding. It's just,
Wow, there's a lot of stuff to
bring the
do.
family. Yeah, a lot of stuff for the family to do.
Very cool. That's awesome. That's great. Well, hopefully that rendezvous kicks off without a hitch and it's a successful one.
It'll be great.
That's great. All right, Gene, you ready to dive in?
Let's talk about Ishi.
Okay, man. So we kind of are picking through this timeline of the modern traditional bow hunting era of our timeline here. Our last episode on history of the bow, make sure to go check it out on YouTube and on our podcast audio version. We talk about the Thompson brothers and their lives as we move into that like early 1900s time frame. And Gene, I guess this will be a good time for you to kind of recap the intertwining of the Thompson brothers story and their timeline to Ishi, and we can just kick it off from there.
Where we left off last time talking about the Thompson brothers. The Thompson brothers basically covered that time frame between 1844, when Morris was born, through the Civil War, the formation of the National Archery Association in 1879, the writing of the Witchery of Archery in 1878. And then Morris passes away in 1901, but Will lives until 1918. Well, during that time, there's an overlap there, and I think something extremely significant. And I think this story is the most important story in our history of hunting and the bow and arrow. Because this man that we're going to talk about today is the man who got people like Dr. Pope into the bow and arrow. Without this man, Pope probably might not have taken up the bow and arrow.
Wow.
Without this man, Pope and Young probably would not have met. Without this man, Compton probably would not have come into the picture. So this man is really the genesis of all the reason for all these people coming together in one place at one time. Ishi. And Ishi, interestingly enough, was not his real name, because in the culture of his tribe, which were known as the Yahi Indians in Northern California, the culture of his tribe, you were not allowed to speak your own name. I could tell you someone else's name, but I could not tell you my name. So
Really?
we and we'll talk about how this came to be,
Sure.
but we put a name to him. Ishi is the Yahi word for man. So interestingly enough, we'll call him Ishi, but we never knew his real name.
No kidding.
So this story really begins, and I'm going to go back to pre-California being a state.
Okay.
This is really going back into maybe even pre-colonization, pre-settling. There were some tribes in the north of California, relatively small tribes, more mountainous tribes, and the main tribe there was the Yana. So you can see in the state map there of California, the dark circle on the left at the top of California there. That's what the area we're talking about.
Okay.
And then you see over on the right side, you see an exploded version of that. So the tribes that we're going to talk about were the Yahi Indians. There were the northern, the central, and the southern Yana. And then there were also the Yahi, and the Yahi were on the very southern border.
Mm. How much land mass is that Yana section there, would you estimate?
That whole section you're looking at there is about 60 miles in length and about 40 miles wide.
Okay.
So we're talking about a pretty small culture, a pretty small tribe.
Sure.
And at their peak, even before settlers moved in, before prospectors moved in, the entire Yana tribe never numbered more than 5,000 people.
Oh, no kidding.
The Yahi, the southernmost component of the Yahi Indians, the Yahi, also known as the Mill Creeks, historically were never more than 400 to 500 people in the tribe.
Wow.
So, yeah, we're talking pretty small civilizations, pretty small cultures to begin with.
Yeah.
Now, something happened in 1849 that changed their world forever. And that was the discovery of gold in California. So in 1849, we had the California Gold Rush. Now, the Yana were living in the mountains of California, Northern California, but in the part of the mountains they were living in was more accessible. There were a lot more creek bottoms, a lot more meadows,
Hmm.
easier to get into, easier to traverse, easier to settle. So when the prospectors came in searching for gold in 1849, they didn't come as a trickle. They came as tens of thousands of people, just kind of overnight. The gates open and these people come flooding in.
And
And they
that
start,
number, those tens of thousands of people coming into the region, and you compare that to the Yahi of being like so small. I mean, only
yeah,
500 deep. I mean, that's just insane amount of numbers coming
yeah.
through.
Now the Yahi were not impacted yet because
Got it.
the Yahi living in the southern part of that range was very much more inaccessible. So when the settlers and the prospectors first came in that 1849, 1850 time period, they came in obviously through the easier to access areas, which was more of where the Yana were. And the Yana, having again never been more than 5,000 people, were pretty quickly overrun
Hmm.
by the prospectors and the settlers coming in. And they were bringing in their wagon trains. They were also bringing in all of their livestock, all of their horses, and the livelihoods of the Yana were quickly destroyed.
Hmm.
All the grass was trampled by the cattle, all the grass was being eaten by the horses, and they were just being pushed out of their homeland again almost overnight.
Wow. That is wild.
So there, you can imagine there was a lot of conflict. You would do the same
Sure.
if your home country were being invaded by these people who were coming in by the tens of thousands, and you were just being your whole culture, your whole lifestyle was being gobbled up by these new settlers and prospectors. You would react. So there was, some raiding started, and the Mill Creeks were known to not be a very peaceful tribe. They weren't warlike, when
Okay.
we think of the Comanches or something. But, you push me, I'm going to push you back.
Sure.
So the Mill Creeks or the Yahi, um, interchangeable, I'll use the words interchangeably here, began to push back a little bit. And the Yana started to push back a little bit. And there started to be some
Hmm.
raiding. There started to be some cattle disappearing because all the deer that I had relied upon for feeding my family for centuries are
Sure.
disappearing. So now, and you got to think from their point of view, cattle were just wild animals like deer were. They didn't think of cattle as being livestock. They thought
Hmm.
of cattle being there's another animal on the prairie out here, not
Right.
the prairie, but the meadows. So hey, he's a lot easier to get to than the deer
Yeah.
would be.
Yeah. A lot more meat.
So we start to see conflict, from the Yana and the Yahi starting to raid and starting to rustle some of the cattle to feed their families.
So Gene, real quick before we continue on, so this image that we're looking at here, so anybody listening to this on the audio version, the video cast version is going to be packed with images to support Gene's story in the timeline here. He sent me, I don't know, 30 or 40 images here that we're going to be picking through. So I'm going to do my best to try to keep up with his story and bring up pictures as the story gets to that portion of the timeline. But this California map that we're looking at, these are all different tribes, different Native American tribes on like in the breakdown of the California region. Is that accurate?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, the ones we're focusing on today, the Yana and the Yahi, we're in the northern part of California. The town, if you're looking on a map, the closest town would be Oroville. In very north central of California.
Gotcha.
Okay, so now we're starting to see conflict, and um, we're starting to see the settlers and the prospectors reacting, and their reactions, as you would anticipate, are deadly. And the Yana are the first to feel the wrath of the prospectors and the settlers, who they feel the prospectors and the settlers feel that the Mill Creeks and the Yana, the Yahi, they're all savage
Mm,
Indians raiding our cabins, stealing our items, killing our cattle. But from the other point of view, from the natives' point of view, these people moved in and stole my land. These people brought their cows and their horses. They killed our deer. They ate all the grass. There are no more deer. It's okay that I'm going to go and I'm going to do what I need to do to for my family to survive.
sure.
I'm going to take from them what they took from us. Okay, so again, Yana start off with maybe 5,000 people, and let's date that about 1849, 1850.
Okay.
California became a state in 1850.
Mm,
Okay, just to give you a frame of reference. So there are about 5,000 Yana when all of this starts. Within less than 10 years, those 5,000 Yana have been, for the most part, removed from the land.
wow.
Uh, it was legal in California at the time to capture Native Americans and indenture them into your workforce.
Wow. No kidding.
Basically,
That's crazy. That is
it was
crazy.
it was so some of the Yana were killed, some of the Yana were captured and became more or less slave labor for the prospectors and the settlers moving in. But that 5,000 that we started with by 1860 are pretty much all gone.
Wow.
So that quickly, this all happened. Now, another frame of reference here, what else happened in that 1860 time frame? Well, there was a man elected as president of the United States, Abraham Lincoln. There was a war that started, the Civil War. Now, just to give you a frame of reference, Ishi was born somewhere between 1860 and 1862. We don't know for sure, but from the medical records after he was captured and taken to Dr. Pope estimated his age to be around being born around 1860,
Mm,
61, 62. So now the 5,000 Yana by 1860 are pretty much gone. The 4 to 500 Yahi, they've been impacted, but not nearly to the level that the Yana have.
and why so
Because
focused in that northern, central, and southern area of the northern Yana tribe versus the Yahi? Was the like gold density there during the gold rush? Was it
no,
just
it
like
was it
a
was very much just the accessibility.
okay, yeah.
Um, the wagon trains, it was easier to move through the Yana country. It
Mm-hmm.
was easier to settle in the Yana country. The Yahi lived in some areas that were just inaccessible and inhospitable to the white man coming
Mm,
in. It wasn't the kind of country that we would look for.
gotcha.
So the Yahi were a lot more, protected by the terrain, by the geography than the Yana were.
Mm-hmm.
But their world starts to change now. In 1860, 1861, Ishi is born, maybe 1862. Now we're starting to see the settlers and the prospectors moving more into the Yahi country. They had already civilized, captured, settled the Yana country. Now they're moving farther and farther into the hills, into the mountains. Now the Yahi are starting to become impacted. So as the settlers are moving into that country and they're building their homesteads in that country, the Indians the Yahi start to push back.
Hmm.
And in 1864, there were two women from one of the settlers' cabins who were killed. And the settlers created a vigilante party. And these vigilantes, there were about 40 of them, go up into the mountains in search of these. Many of them called them Mill Creeks. We now call them Yahi. Go up into the hills looking for these people who killed these two ladies. They find 300 Indians at a religious ceremony. They surround them and they kill 300 of them in one
No,
massacre.
no kidding.
Now, when
Wow.
you've got a culture that is entirely 4 to 500 people, And now you start to remove them in such quantities, 300 of them being
Yeah.
killed in one massacre. Um, in 1865, there was another massacre. This was at an area called Three Knolls. And again, the vigilantes come in and surround them, and there were three little ridges. That's why they called it the Three Knolls, the Battle of the Three Knolls. Another 300 were killed.
No
So
kidding.
now we're getting some of the Mill Creeks, we're getting some of the Yana. Now, even the Yana are pretty much gone. The Yahi now are down to maybe there's only 50 of the 500 remaining. In that time frame, we're only talking from 1850 being unimpacted to 1865, there's only about 50 of them left.
Wow. That's incredible.
It's just amazing to think. There were bounties placed on the natives. You could take the scalp of dead Indians into the town. The town might give you a bounty, maybe 50 cents, and the state would give you another bounty, maybe of $1.
Wow.
So people not only were
It's
going out and killing
systemic.
these people, yeah,
Jeez.
not only killing them because they're of retributions, but killing them just for the sake of money, killing
You,
them just to get the reward, to get the bounties that were put on them.
you know, it's wild to think about. Like, you think about Ishi, and I guess, like, to the uninitiated, before hearing this story, you almost think about, oh, there was this peaceful Indian found, right? And that's not the case. Like, it wasn't like he was living this glorious life of freedom and his old ways in his own rituals. Like, he was in hiding. All of
Well,
his people were.
yeah, pretty much, and that's where we're getting to right now.
Gosh, that's
The
crazy.
Yahi pre 1850, again, there's 500 of them. They've seen an occasional Mexican, they've seen an occasional Spaniard, but now the prospectors start to come in droves, and there starts the conflict. So Ishi is born in that time period where he never knew that peace.
Mm,
They'd already started killing his tribe. They'd already started killing his friends and family by the time he was born. So he never knew
yeah, right. It's a great
that
point.
era, that point in time when the Yahi lived in peace.
What a crazy life,
Uh,
man.
yeah, yeah. So, all right, now we're down to about 50 Yahi left from the original 4 to 500 in just a matter of a few years.
Hmm.
In 1868, there were maybe 50 left. Some vigilantes go into the mountains looking for Yahi, purposely looking for Yahi, and they chase, visually chase them on foot, chase them on horse, chase them with dogs, the remaining Yahi into a cave. Now we know that cave is Kingsley's Cave.
Hmm.
Of the 50 that remained, 33, approximately 50, it could have been 45, could have been 53, approximately 50 Yahi remaining. 33 of them were chased into this cave, Kingsley's Cave, in 1868. And these people went into the cave and slaughtered them,
Oh my
massacred them
gosh.
inside the cave.
Dude, what a way to
And
freaking go. Unbelievable.
there were four of these vigilantes going into this cave. Remember, the Yahi didn't have firearms. They had never picked up the firearm. They lived a pretty isolated life into the mountains. You can see how rough the terrain was.
Yeah, that terrain is
What you
so
can't
steep.
see is how thick that terrain is. It's very dense, not only steep, but it's very dense. So they'd never been exposed. They've been exposed to the firearms because they've been killed by firearms, but they had never picked up the firearm.
Hmm.
They just had their bows and arrows. They just had their spears. So when these four vigilantes pushed these 33 remaining Yahi, 33 of the 50 or so remaining Yahi into that cave and walked in and started shooting at them with their rifles and killing them all. Men, women, and children,
Jeez.
babies. They killed all 33 of those Yahi in that cave.
Wow.
Now, one of the four vigilantes came out and they all retold their stories. They didn't see it as genocide as we might see it today. They saw it as, I'm just doing what I had to do.
Yeah.
So when they came back, they told their stories. And one of those vigilantes that went into that cave and was shooting those 33 people with his rifle put down his rifle. He was shooting a um, repeating rifle, 56 caliber. He put it down and finished the rest of the killing with his handgun, with his pistol.
Jeez.
And he said, I did that because the 56 caliber rifle was tearing them up too bad,
Oh my gosh, dude.
especially the babies.
What the flip,
That was
dude?
his, that was
Dude,
his,
what? That's like a. Oh my gosh, that is so. What an image.
so, and
It's
again, so
crazy.
think about this because this Ishi and probably 12 to 15 of the remaining 50 or so had not been pushed into the cave, but they were most likely in the bush witnessing this,
Hmm.
hiding. Ishi is at this time 16, 17, 18-year-old young man watching his friends and family being
Jeez.
massacred in a cave. And remember that when we get about an hour from now and we start to talk about what kind of a man Ishi turned out to be. His whole life, from the time he's born in the early 1860s, he's seen nothing but massacre after massacre after
Right.
massacre. He's seen his tribe being reduced down to nothing. He's seen his tribe being hunted and killed like rats. Now there's only about 12 or so of these original 500, 4 to 500 Yahi left. Now, this is where we get into what you had referred to earlier. It's known as the concealment period. So these last 12 or so remaining Yahi realize they're fighting a losing battle. They realize they're overwhelmed numerically. They realize there's no way we can fight with our bows and arrows and spears against these guns. So these last 12 or so Yahi realize the only thing left for them to do is to go deeper and farther into this country
Hmm.
where they won't come. We'll go back into areas that are so rough that even the vigilantes will not come up here. And they began what we now call the concealment period.
Hmm.
So, approximately the next 40 years, they live in this concealment.
Wow. 40
And
years.
people think now the settlers, the prospectors, the people who had moved into the country think that they killed the last of the Yahi when they killed those 33 in Kingsley's Cave. They think the Yahi are now extinct.
Hmm.
That picture is not Kingsley's Cave, but it's similar to Kingsley's Cave. That cave is actually a cave that Ishi, after 1911, when he was captured in the stockyard, would go into the mountains and
Hmm.
spend time in this cave. So it's very similar to what
Sure.
Kingsley's Cave would have been.
Wow.
So, but now people believe that the Yahi are extinct. They go up into the furthest farthest reaches of the deepest, darkest, thickest country they can find, and they begin hiding in concealment. There's only about 12 of them left. They go so far as they know if people find evidence that there still exist, that they will be hunted and killed. So they go so far as to learn how to hide walking rock to rock, never putting a footprint in the ground.
No kidding.
When you cross a creek, they would use sticks, something like a pole vault,
Yeah, like a
to
pole vault.
cross the creek so that they wouldn't leave tracks in the sand or the mud. They would never build a fire out where the smoke could be seen. 40 years they lived
40
like
years of
this.
that.
40
That is
years.
incredible.
And what's amazing, think about this. Look out your window. Pick something that's half a mile away. They lived in an area that was only a half a mile wide and 3 miles long
No
for
kidding.
40 years
Without being detected.
without being detected.
It's
Half a
incredible.
mile wide. I can sit here in my house and look out and I can see, down the road half a mile.
Yeah,
That's
right.
not, and 3 miles long. And I'm going to spend the next 40 years in that small piece of ground, and I'm going to have to hide every evidence I have. I cannot lose an arrow. I cannot leave behind a gutted deer. I cannot leave behind fish parts. I cannot leave behind a foot track. No evidence
Dude,
that would
what a
allow them to think that I'm still.
fear-based way to live, right?
Oh, yeah.
Just awful.
Now, over that time, those 12 people would probably, some of them would go outside of that small area because, again, there's not a lot of game up there.
Yes, I was
There's a
thinking the
lot of,
same thing. Like, what happens if you go a week or two without getting a kill? Like,
yeah.
how you
So
gotta explore.
eventually they get so desperate, they start to venture out
Hmm.
and they start to kill a cow now and then, or they start to take a cow, drive it away from the rancher,
Hmm.
get it up into an area where they could kill it, and then they could get the meat and take it back to camp. Those 12 people either died, and there's no historical record of what happened, either died or were killed, or somehow we get to the last four of the Yahi living in that half-mile wide by 3 mile long country.
Hmm.
Um, Now, I think, and I've got a lot of books on Ishi, and I'm going to show some books here
Cool.
that I think people will, if you're interested in the story of Ishi, this is the book that everybody knows. This is by far the most popular book, the most well-known book about Ishi, written in 1962 by Theodora Kroeber. We'll go more into Kroeber a little bit later. But if you're going to start with one book, get this book,
This is the
Ishi in
one.
Two Worlds.
Ishi in
Yeah.
Two Worlds.
Now, that book is going to give you 90% of what you need to know. There are other books. Now, these other books are not as well known, but I think if you really want to become knowledgeable about Ishi and the story, and it's a fascinating story, there's so much information, so much knowledge, so much. It's not just a story of the man Ishi, it's a story of the culture, it's a story of genocide, it's a story of moving from the Stone Age to modern man overnight.
It
There's
really
so many
is.
different
I'm blown away. Like,
twists.
I'm
Yeah,
on the edge of my
so many
seat right
different
now.
twists on this story. But here's another one. This one was written in 1908, fighting the Mill Creeks.
Hmm.
Remember, I said the Yahi and the Mill
Yeah, yeah.
Creeks were they were the same. Originally, the locals called them the Mill Creeks. It was written in 1909. This is before Ishi came down on the mountains. So this is the vigilante perspective of going after these evil Indians who are up stealing our cows and killing our women.
1909. Man, the
This was written
subtitle
from
of
their
this is
point of view.
crazy. Fighting the Mill
Yeah,
Creeks,
fighting.
being a personal account of campaigns against Indians of the Northern Sierras. What a
Yeah,
subtitle.
and,
Jeez.
and you can imagine, written from their perspective, it's going to tell a different story than.
Absolutely.
But I also want to really encourage people to look for these books. Now, that one I just showed you, Fighting the Mill Creeks, that can be gotten in reprint. An
Mm-hmm.
original copy of that would be very expensive, but you can get the reprints of that for 10 or 15 bucks.
Oh, okay, cool.
These books I'm going to show you were written by a guy by the name of Richard Burrell. He wrote several, I think there's 4 or 5 different books that he wrote about Ishi. Now, he went into a deep
Wow.
study, a lot deeper, a lot different angles than Kroeber did in her book.
Hmm.
So you can get these books, go on eBay and look for these books and just look for the author Richard Burrill, Burrill, and Ishi. And, they'll come back. Now, these books, they're not as easy to find as Krober's book, but
They
they're
look pretty
not
hefty. They look like big books.
possible. Yeah, and the information in there is unbelievable.
Sure.
Okay, so now let's come back, pick the story up. So remember, we're in concealment. We started concealment in 1870. We're so fearful that we're going to be found and we're going to be killed that we don't even walk on dirt. We walk on rocks, rock to rock. Eventually, we get to the point where we're desperate. We must have not just food, but we also need things to keep us warm in the winter. We've gone higher and higher and farther into the mountains so that we can be concealed. The winters are pretty brutal up here. So it's not just food, it's also clothing, it's also blankets, it's things like this. So eventually, by the early 1890s, we're so desperate that we start going back down and we start raiding again a few of the cabins. But we're very careful not to leave any signs of really who did this. Could have been anybody, couldn't it? Could have been
Sure.
another settler
Right.
or
There you go.
prospector
Yeah,
that raided
right.
your cabin. How do you know it was an Indian? Because they're extinct, right? In 1894, there was a prospector in the valley there in Deer Creek and Mill Creek area who had been raided more than once. He had had things taken, eating utensils, cooking utensils, blankets, clothing, food. That had happened to him enough times that he said, I'm tired of this. I'll fix this problem. So he took a sack of flour and laced it with rat poison, strychnine, left it on the table in the cabin, and he only stayed in this cabin occasionally. It was not a full-time cabin. He left this sack of flour on the table with a handwritten note on it. In English, he wrote on that sack of flour a note that said, this flour is poisoned, do not eat. Because he knew if another white man came in, they would be able to read it. And he knew
That's so smart.
if those Mill Creeks came in, if those Yahi came in, those vermin can't read. They'll take the flour, they'll eat the flour, and the rat poison will kill them. What kind of person can do that, you know?
Like, that's incredible to think about. I mean, that
So, yeah,
that goes to show you the view of what they thought about the Yahi Indians. Like, they were less than,
yeah,
right?
they were vermin. They were no better than
Wow.
rats. So, yeah, that particular story just really bothers me that, those people come in. Maybe that's how some of the remaining 12 disappeared. Maybe, they got some of that and ate it and they died. Maybe some of them were shot and not reported. But anyhow, the 12 dwindles down to 4. In 1895, there was another settler, comes back to his cabin. And as he comes to his cabin late in the evening, just before sunset, he sees a small group of Yahi leaving the cabin with their arms full. Clothing, blankets, food. And he holds them at gunpoint. And he actually communicates with one of them. Now, remember, before the gold rush, the Mexicans, Spanish were in that country. So some of the natives learned a little bit of English, a little bit of Spanish. This settler was able to communicate with one lady, an old lady of these Yahi who had raided their cabin. And she convinces him to let them go. And he lets them go. And he lets them take the supplies that they were going to raid. because he knew these people are going up. It's going to be a bad winter. They need these things to survive. He let them take
Wow.
what they had.
A little bit of grace. Finally.
A little bit of grace in a time when there
Seriously.
wasn't a lot of grace being
Gosh.
shown. Now
Unbelievable.
this gets really interesting because later that fall, he comes back to his cabin again. His cabin had been broken into again. This time, nothing was missing. This time, the raiders, the Yahi, left him gifts. They left him baskets they had made. They left him, to them, would have been very important
Wow.
items as probably a thank you for not killing us this spring when we raided your cabin and got the things we needed to survive. Thank you for not killing us. Here's a token of our appreciation. Here's some baskets that
Wow.
we made. And those baskets today can be seen in one of the museums
No
out there in
kidding.
Oroville.
That is so cool.
So it wasn't all, all the settlers and prospectors were not bad people, evil people. There were a few of them were sympathetic.
Hmm.
So we're down now to the final four people, the final four Yahi.
Wow.
They've been in concealment now for over 35 years.
That blows my mind. That blows my mind. In a half-mile by 3-mile long stretch of
Yeah. I mean, when
wilderness.
you really think of spending nearly 40 years in that and knowing you cannot be found, knowing you cannot be seen, it's amazing they were able to do that.
Really.
So, okay, now we're coming to a point where it's inevitable that their time in concealment is going to end. Civilization is pushing farther and farther. Development is being increasing in its pace. There's going to be a new lake built in the area just outside of Oroville Lake.
Hmm.
They're going to need to build a big dam for this new lake they're going to build. We're in 1908. Surveyors go up into the mountains to survey the area, preparing for building the dam to Lake Oroville. Surveyors stumble into the camp.
No kidding.
These last four Yahi remain. In the camp, these Yahi had built this camp so carefully in some of the most difficult to reach areas. They called it Grizzly Bear's hiding place. When they walked into the camp, probably the four people that were there, Ishi, a woman about similar in age. We don't know if it was his sister or his cousin, so we call her the sister cousin.
Mm.
An old man who was probably Ishi's uncle, and an old woman who was Ishi's mother. That's all that remained.
Wow.
Now, the old man was a medicine man, probably Ishi's uncle. He was training Ishi to be the next medicine man. The woman, Ishi's mother, is so old and so frail. When Ishi, his sister cousin, and the old man run away because they see the white man coming, the surveyors coming, the old woman is too frail. She can't walk. So they roll her up in this blanket, hide her inside one of the lodges, hoping that she's not discovered. Well, the surveyors find the lodge. They go into the lodge and they start ransacking all the items in the lodge. And they see this blanket rolled up on the ground. And they unroll the blanket and out rolls this old woman. They didn't even know she was in there until
Wow.
they unrolled the blanket. She's obviously scared. She's thinking they're going to kill her. They try to communicate through gestures, we're not going to kill you, you're
Mm-hmm.
okay, we're not going to harm you. And they didn't. But what did they do? They stole from the lodge and from the camp everything that they could carry.
No kidding.
They stole the bows, they stole the arrows, they stole the cooking utensils, They even stole the blanket the old woman was wrapped in.
Jeez. What pieces of garbage. Seriously. What the hell?
Because they recognized the blanket as being a blanket that had been stolen from one of the cabins
Hmm.
down the valley earlier. So they, in their minds,
Taking it back.
repatriated, took back what had been stolen. But that old woman is now laying there, no blanket. The surveyors leave, carrying everything they can carry. Ishi, sister cousin, uncle come back after the surveyors leave, and they take the old woman and they go away. We don't know where they went.
Hmm.
Now, during this, speculation is the sister cousin and the old man, in their escape, tried to cross the river and drowned. We don't know that to be true, but that was the story as Ishi believed it to be true.
Hmm.
Now, I'm going to say it differently. I'm going to back up a little bit and say it a little differently.
Okay.
That's the story as Ishi told us. Later, Ishi insinuated that that might have been just a story he told to keep people from looking for them.
Hmm.
Maybe the sister cousin and the old man got away. We don't know that, but she did insinuate that. So officially, let's say officially, now there's just Ishi and the old woman, his mother. Let's assume
Okay.
that the other
I
two,
like it.
sister cousin and old man, did drown. So now Ishi gets his mother and he takes her. It's going into winter. And he hides her in caves. She doesn't last very long. She dies from old age, she dies from exposure, she dies from starvation, all the above, more likely. Within a matter of weeks after the surveyors stumbling into camp, Ishi is by himself. He's the last surviving Yahi.
Wow. Could you imagine,
From five,
Gene? Could you imagine that
sorry.
being the? Could you imagine that being the last of your people? Like,
Can you imagine not just being the last of your people, but can you imagine in your lifetime, you have seen your tribe going from a healthy 500 people to being massacred time after time after time, to being poisoned like rats, to be chased, to be exterminated, and you being the last survivor of an entire culture.
right? Unbelievable.
What,
Can't even
okay,
imagine that.
can you imagine that? And how would that make you as a person? What kind of person could you be
Right.
after witnessing all of that firsthand,
Sure.
being involved in all of that firsthand? Keep that in mind when we talk about Ishi later.
Yeah. Yeah. You would
So
think
now
you would assume you would be disgruntled, full of
you
fear,
would think
zero
that
trust,
I would be full of hate. I
and
would be
yeah,
full of
right.
revenge. I would be, I get those guys,
Exactly. Exactly.
but he didn't.
Hmm.
So now in 1908, now we're down to the last survivor of an entire culture is Ishi. Again, it's not his real name, Ishi. We call him later, but we'll call him Ishi throughout this story. He's the last survivor in 1908. He spends the next 3 years by himself
Hmm.
in the mountains, struggling to survive, struggling to deal with everything that he has witnessed throughout his life. And in August of 1911, Ishi gets to a point where hunger and lonesome and desperation all lead him to say, I just can't do this anymore.
Oh, that's so sad.
I'm leaving my concealment. I'm leaving this area and I'm going down into the valleys where I know the white man lives, where I know My people go and don't come back. I'm hungry. I'm starving. I'm desperate. I think he went down to get food, but he might have been also going down just out of
I can't do this
it's
anymore.
time.
Yeah,
I
it's
can't do
time.
this anymore.
Hmm.
So the books will tell you, and Kroeber's book will tell you, it was August 29th, 1911. In reality, it was not. In reality, it was the evening of August 28th, 1911. Ishi comes down. He had walked about, gosh, I think if I remember right, 40 miles from his concealment
Whoa, jeez.
into this slaughterhouse stockyard.
For those of
My
you guys
theory
listening
is
to this on the audio version, we have pictures of the slaughterhouse and everything we're going to be
this
sharing
is
here.
yeah, this picture is the actual slaughterhouse.
Hmm.
Ishi walked into this slaughterhouse on the evening, he walked into the stockyard of this slaughterhouse on the evening of August 28th, 1911, just before dark. Dogs get scent of him. Dogs come out, start barking. Dogs corner Ishi into the corner of this corral. This picture you're looking at here is the actual corral. The tree in the background there is the corner where Ishi was when the dogs
Hmm.
came out and surrounded him. And he kneels down, squats down, and almost in a surrender position, waiting his fate. They're likely going to kill me. They're likely going to shoot me, hang me.
Hmm.
Who's going to know? I have no one that's going to be there to mourn my passing. I'm the last. This is probably my fate. Here it goes. Some young men, teenagers actually, come out of the slaughterhouse and see the dogs to see what the dogs are barking at.
Sure.
And one of them walks over and he sees this man squatting in the corner of that stockade. He's got nothing on but a tattered shirt. And he doesn't know at that time, he doesn't know he's the last Yahi Indian. He thinks he could be a Mexican. He
Hmm.
thinks he could be a homeless Mexican that had came in to the stockyard to steal food. So he gets the others in the stockyard, the men who work there, to come out, and they didn't do what Ishi thought. They didn't come out, shoot him, whip him. They came out and they realized that this man was desperate. So they called the local sheriff in Oroville. They explain what they have. The sheriff comes out driving an automobile. Ishi had just walked out of the Stone Age.
Right. Driving
Ishi
an
had just
automobile.
walked out of the Stone Age. Nothing but a bow and arrow in his entire life, spears. And this sheriff walks out or drives out in an automobile to see what the commotion is all about.
He's probably like, what is this thing?
And the sheriff again is sympathetic. He doesn't know who this man is or what his background is. Obviously, this man is hungry, he's starved. There's a story here. We don't know what it is. So he takes Ishi back to Oroville in a car,
Can you imagine?
and he puts Ishi into a jail, into the Oroville jail. They put him into a cell that's reserved for the insane, padded walls,
Mm.
because they think he might be. This
Sure.
might be an insane homeless man.
Right.
The local newspapers start to pick up on the story and they start to put two and two together. The locals start to put two and two together and they think back. Maybe, remember in 1908, 3 years ago, when those surveyors came across that Indian village up in the mountains? Remember that story? The Yahi This could be one of those Yahi.
Wow.
Maybe they're not extinct. This could be one of them. So they write a story. And this picture you're showing now is actually the picture taken in the jail the day that Ishi was taken to the jail. So he was taken to the jail the evening of August 28th, the morning of August 29th, 1911. This is the picture as they found Ishi.
Wow.
Look at how
Look at that.
emaciated he is, how desperate he looks.
Here's another picture of the spot he was found. Some dudes
Yeah,
there pointing at it.
yeah.
Wow.
So they take him to the jail and they put him into the padded cells. And the newspaper comes in and writes a story. And the story, last of the uncivilized tribe is found. The least civilized, this is the actual newspaper clipping you see here.
Is that it?
Least
Right?
civilized man. He can't talk. We can't communicate with him. He's a lost tribe with a lost language. And this story gets printed in the Oroville newspapers August 29th, 1911. And papers around the state pick up the story. Well, back in 1908, when those surveyors came across that camp, that story reached back to the University of California at Berkeley. There were a couple of anthropologists there who were investigating the lost tribes. And they were intrigued that maybe one of those lost tribes, the Yahi, were what was found in 1908 by those surveyors. So one of those anthropologists, his name was Waterman, T.T. Waterman, came in 1908 to Oroville and went up into the mountains in Deer Creek and Mill Creek looking for these last natives and was not able to find them. He goes back and 3 years later picks up his newspaper, and here it is on the front page.
Wow.
The
No
story.
kidding.
They actually found one. He is here. He's in Oroville. He's in the jail. So he calls, telephones. Remember, Ishi just came out of the Stone Age. Now he's been introduced to automobiles and telephones
Oh my gosh.
within 24 hours of him coming out of the Stone Age.
Yeah, you sent me
Waterman,
a picture and says in a matter of 3 days, Ishi went from the Stone Age to this, and then this is the image you sent, which is just like a
yeah,
bustling downtown city center.
San Francisco. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So Waterman calls the sheriff there in Oroville and he says, don't release that man. Wait till I get there. I think he is one of the lost tribe. I think he is one of the lost Yahi that we thought were extinct. I'm going to add this little bit of flavor to the story here.
Okay.
When Ishi was found, if you go back to that picture when of him in the jail cell,
Okay.
look at his hair. Look at his hair. His
Yeah.
hair is singed. His hair is burnt.
Yeah.
The culture of the Yana and the Yahi were when they lost someone, they would go into mourning and they would singe their hair.
Mm.
Remember when I said maybe the old man and maybe the sister cousin did not drown in the river? Maybe they got out and they hid. Maybe Ishi didn't
Right.
tell the story because he was protecting them. He came out of hiding with singed hair. He was mourning someone.
Mm.
Now, some people have speculated he was mourning the loss of his culture. I tend to think maybe he was mourning someone.
Mm.
Okay, whatever. Just a little bit of
Yeah, a little side.
speculation.
Yeah.
I think it just adds a little
I
to the
do too.
story.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay, so now Waterman and the sheriff agree that they're not going to let Ishi go until Waterman comes. Waterman takes the train from San Francisco to Oroville. He gets off, he goes into the jail cell, sits next to this man who becomes known as Ishi, trying to communicate with him to figure out who is he?
Mm.
Which tribe are you from? We know you're an Indian now. but we don't know which tribe you came from. So he starts going through all these different words from different languages, and Ishi doesn't show any recognition of any of the words of any of the tribes. And finally, he gets down to one of the last words, and the word Sawini. And Ishi's eyes light up, and Ishi smiles.
Hmm.
And Waterman said, Sawini. And he pounds on the bed frame, which is made of yellow pine. And Ishi goes, Sawini.
No way.
So Waterman says, at that time, he recognizes that word is one of the few Yahi words that we have access to. One of the Yana that still survived knew a few words of Yahi, and he had written them down.
Hmm.
Ishi recognized that word. Waterman looks at Ishi and said, my God, you're a Yahi. It can't be. You're extinct. You're a Yahi. The first time that we realize this man is from the lost tribe,
Wow.
the extinct tribe of the Yahi.
That is wild. You give me
From that point
goosebumps here,
forward-
Gene. Got goosebumps here.
Well, from that point forward, now Waterman is racing to try to figure out more about this culture. Now, how do I communicate with a man who's the last remaining member of his tribe? How do I communicate with a man whose language has been lost along with his tribe, along with his culture? So they started, I don't know if I sent you any pictures, but they started drawing pictures. They drew a picture of a tree.
Yep.
They drew pictures of a house. And then Ishi would say the word for tree. Ishi would say the word for lot,
Like
house.
iwi and wowi.
Yeah, so they
Yeah.
would, that's how they started to build the language back. And word by word, picture by picture,
Wow.
over the next several days, they started learning enough Yahi words to start communicating with Ishi.
It's amazing.
It's unbelievable how quickly Ishi learned.
Yeah.
Ishi had to have been a very bright man. He had to be. His intelligence level was very high.
Hmm.
So Waterman is building a language now, a dictionary of all the Yahi words. Yeah, that picture there.
There you go. Yep. Sorry, I
These
thought I
are
was
the
sharing my
actual-
screen.
These are the actual pictures of the drawings that Waterman would draw, and then Ishi would say the word, and then Waterman would phonetically spell out the word. right
Yeah, yeah.
next
I
to
love
it.
it.
And this
Guys,
is
if
this
you're-
is how they, this is
Guys-
how they built things.
Sorry. I was just going to tell our listeners here on the audio version, just a reminder, this is in video cast format, and the amount of pictures and additional information that Gene has provided that we're sharing on the screen right now just really brings the story to life. It's super cool. Yeah, continue on. It's all yours, Gene.
So, yep. So I'm putting my mind in the right place here. So August 29th, 1911, he comes into the stockyard. August 28th, 1911, he comes into the stockyard. August 29, August 30, he's now front page news
Right.
all across California. August 31st, Waterman comes to see Ishi. 2 to 3 days between leaving the Stone Age to riding in an automobile to listening to a telephone conversation to teaching someone your language using pictures. His mind must have been spinning,
Could you imagine?
thinking, I'm coming down, they're going to kill me. No, they're going to take me for a ride in this thing that's got wheels.
Yeah, what is this thing?
What kind of world am I moving into here? So Waterman he telegraphs back to the University of California, Berkeley, to his colleague. His colleague's name was Theodore Kroeber, And he says, "Indeed, we have found the last Yahi. Indeed, he is the real thing." And they agree that they're going to get permission from the Bureau of Indian Affairs to take Ishi from the Oroville jail back to the University of California, Berkeley.
Mm.
So now it's September 4th. It's only, what is that, 6 days after he leaves the Stone Age. He gets on the train.
He gets on a train.
Gets on the train going
He's
from
like, this is
Oroville
just a
back
giant
to
one of those
Berkeley.
other things I wrote in.
He had
Unreal.
seen, when he was living his Stone Age life, when he was in the mountains, when there were some of his family and tribes still alive, they would go to areas high up in the mountains and they would look down and they could see the trains
Mm.
going through the valleys. And his mother told him that don't be afraid because they never leave their tracks. They cannot
Oh.
come and get you. They never leave their tracks. So he had seen a train, but he didn't really know what a train was. He knew that it was a tool and something of the white man. Uh, so he gets on the train in Oroville, and there's pictures of him at the train station. This is Ishi in the middle in the straw hat, and they gave him some clothes to wear. They gave him some shoes to wear. He refused to wear the shoes
Is that right?
because my feet allow me to feel the ground. My
Mm.
feet allow me to be more. It's easier to walk. It's better to walk without the shoes. But this is the picture of Ishi there in the straw hat at the train station on September 4th, just 6 days after he left the Stone Age.
Oh my gosh.
And the man standing next to him on the right, there's another picture. The man standing next to him on the right there is Sam Batwa. And Sam is the Yahi Indian who had been captured and indentured, so he didn't get killed.
Mm.
So Sam was brought in by Waterman to try to help communicate with Ishi because maybe Ishi will understand some Yana words, which he understood a few, but not many. Um, but anyhow, Sam Batwa was part of the lost civilization too, but he was Yana.
Wow. It's
Okay, so
amazing.
now we're at the train station, September 4th, 1911, 6 days after he came out of the Stone Age. He's put on a train to go back to the University of California, Berkeley.
Hmm.
That's the train. They get back to the University of California, Berkeley. Now, this is the picture. Go back to that picture that showed San Francisco.
Oh, okay. Yep. Mm-hmm. Looking for it. Looking for it. Oh, I went too far.
So we leave the Stone Age. We ride in a car. We get on a train.
Yeah.
Oh, before they put him on the train, I think this is really interesting. Before they put him on the train to send him off to the University of California, Berkeley, they had 6 days there. What are we going to do with this man? Now that we know he's not a savage,
Mm-hmm.
now that we know he's not going to kill us, we're not going to kill him, what are we going to do with him?
I
So
think
they
I know what you're
decided,
going to say. We're going to take
we
him to a
decided,
movie.
let's take him to the theater. So Ishi, 4 days after coming out of the Stone Age, is taken to the theater
Can
for a
you
show.
even imagine? Could you imagine? Like, what world do you think
He
you're
had
living
never
in?
been he had never been in his lifetime in a group of people more than 50, but he was so young he probably didn't remember that so much.
Right.
In a group more than 12, finally in a group more than 4, finally in a group more than 2. Now all of a sudden he's being taken to the theater where there's hundreds of people.
Insane. What an insane
And
experience he must have had.
and they take him to a show and it's a live show and there's singing, dancing, and they think that Ishi will enjoy the show, but they think he's probably going to like the girls. He's probably because he's likely not a lot of girlfriends during his time in concealment. they think he's going to be stricken by the ladies dancing around in their frilly outfits, and he may find that appealing. But what Ishi finds appealing the most, he didn't even really look at the girls dancing around. He kept looking back at the people in the theater,
Mm.
the number of people, the 100 or 200 people in the theater. He was amazed at the number of people. And it was like, my gosh, I've been so lonely for so long, and look at all
Look
these
at all these
people.
people. It's amazing. Absolutely
So,
amazing.
a culture shock.
Culture shock.
Okay, now we're in the
Jeez.
University of California. So you had the picture up there of San Francisco, six
Hmm.
days after he leaves the Stone Age. He's put into the life of a bustling California. Um, can you imagine having left the Stone Age and seeing this
I
within six
know.
days?
Look at all those people.
And they decide that they're going to take him to the university museum, and they're going to give him his own apartment, let's say, in the university museum. So anthropology at that time is a relatively new science, and Kroeber and Waterman are some of the first anthropologists. The University of California, Berkeley is one of the first universities who have a dedicated anthropology department. And they take Ishi back there and they give him his own apartment inside the museum.
Hmm.
And they also realize that this man needs to have purpose in life. So they don't want him to become a ward of the state. Hmm. Think about that in
Hmm.
today's times. They don't want him to become a ward of the state and live off of welfare. We want him to have a job.
Hmm.
We want him to earn his keep because that will give him self worth and he will feel more purpose in life. So they give him the job as the assistant janitor in the museum, and they pay Ishi each week for the
Hmm.
work he's doing. When they pay Ishi each week, they give him a check. But this is Stone Age man. Stone Age man can't write. Stone Age man can't sign the check to cash the
Hmm.
check. So I think I also sent you a picture. They had to teach Ishi how to sign his name so that he could cash his check. That's Ishi's signature. Now he can receive a check for his work. He can take it to the bank. He can sign the check and he can cash it, and they will give him back money.
That's such a
And he
far
asked
way away from the Stone Age.
6, yes, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, four
Right.
weeks after leaving the Stone Age, he is receiving a paycheck,
He's fully into the economics of modern life.
not only learning the culture, he's learning the
Wow.
financial system of a new world.
That is crazy.
And he wanted to be paid in 50-cent pieces. So they would give him his $20, 50-cent pieces each week when he cashed his check, and he would take them back. Now, think about this. He would take them back and stack them in stacks of 10. So he knew how to count.
Huh.
He would stack them in stacks of 10 and leave them on the table, his table in his apartment. Kroeber explained to Ishi, that's a little risky, Ishi. Somebody may come in and take your money. Ishi just left a civilization that there was no thought of somebody stealing from you to a civilization where you have to be careful about leaving things on
Hmm.
your own desk in your own apartment that somebody might come in and steal it. So Kroeber convinced him that I have a safe. We can put your 50-cent pieces in the safe, and whenever you need them, we can go get them for you. So Ishi is learning about banking. He's learning about safekeeping. He's learning about you can't just trust everybody.
Hmm.
He loved ice cream. He would take his 50-cent pieces down by himself now. He's walking the streets by himself, weeks, few weeks after coming out of the Stone Age, walking downtown and getting ice cream.
That's crazy. Can't wrap my
The
head around that.
transformation, the transformation that he went through. And I'm going to go
It's
back now
remarkable.
and remember the transformation, not just from culture to culture, but the transformation from having witnessed your entire tribe and your own family being massacred to living in that same culture that
Right.
massacred your family peacefully.
Hmm.
You're living in their culture now, peacefully. You're living in their apartments. You're eating their ice cream. You're wearing their clothes. I wonder what was going through his mind.
Yeah.
He had, there's no way, it's inevitable. He must have had some feelings of remorse.
You would
He
think.
must have had some feelings of how could you forget? How could you put that away
Mm-hmm.
and not in at night when the doors are closed, at night when I'm by myself, how could you not remember what had happened to you your entire life? And now here I am assimilating into that culture
Hmm.
peacefully.
Crazy.
The
Crazy.
character, the character, I've talked to a lot of people about this story. The character of the man, the character of someone who could live through what he lived and not be vengeful and not be hate filled
Mm-hmm.
is just simply amazing to
It
me.
is amazing. I agree.
I think that's a sign. I think it's a sign of two things. I think it's a sign first of his culture being a very forgiving culture,
Hmm.
probably. Um, Even pre 1849, there were wars between the tribes. There were people being killed, kidnapped, subjugated. So that must have been, it was not an unfamiliar thing for him, but it wasn't to the level of destruction that he
Yeah.
lived through. But also the intelligence of the man. The intelligence of the man must have been very, very high. Again, he learned so quickly and he realized, he accepted, I'll use the word assimilated, because he was intelligent enough to realize this, I've got to do this.
It's
What are
survival,
my
right?
options?
Like he
What are
went
my
through how
options?
many decades of being in this fight or flight survival mode.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
and with his intelligence level, like you just mentioned, he probably was able to put those pieces together in his head and go, "This is what I have to do to continue to survive."
yeah. And he got to the point, he got to the point where some do-gooders, there's do-gooders in every age, in every culture. I'll use the word do-gooders because I don't know what else to call them. Actually objected to the University of California, Berkeley, taking Ishi in and putting him in the museum into his own apartment and
Hmm.
giving him a job because they removed him from his original culture, from his
Hmm.
original land. We must put him back. We must return him to the wild. He's not a captive animal. He's a man. He's a person. No, we must remove him. We must put him back into the wild where he came from. And by this time, Ishi has learned 400 to 500 words of English. Ishi can communicate well enough to respond to them and say, no,
Hmm.
this is my new life. I will stay here.
Wow.
So
It's
he
amazing.
not didn't just assimilate, he
Yeah.
assimilated happily.
Sure. He probably really loved that ice cream.
And then
He didn't want to
there
get
were
rid of the
there
ice cream.
there were women who were proposing to him.
Really? No way.
So his new life was pretty good now,
Oh yeah.
except for the shoes part. And
Sure.
I'm still
Sure.
not going to do the shoes.
That's so great.
Okay. So now we start to come into a period. Ishi's back at the university wherein late 1911. He's been out of the Stone Age now for a couple of months. When they put him in to the university, they realized they would need to help take care of him. So he had people assigned to his well-being. Kroeber and Waterman were the anthropologists who were assigned to study him and learn from him, and more importantly, for them to learn from him. There was also a linguist assigned to him, Edwin Sapir. That's Kroeber.
Yep.
He's one of the anthropologists who became very, very close to Ishi. Edwin Sapir was the linguist who was tasked with learning the language, but also the stories about the Yahi. So once they could communicate in the Yahi language well enough, Sapir also learned the stories and wrote down the stories of the Yahi culture. He wrote down the stories that Yahi would pass down from generation to generation. Google Ishi recordings. There are actual voice recordings, wax recordings of Ishi singing Yahi songs and telling Yahi stories in Ishi's own voice. You can go out and you can play those, and you can hear Ishi, his own voice, that were recorded. There were 150 hours or so of Ishi's recorded voice songs and stories that Sapir captured on wax recordings. Now,
let me see if you can hear this come through the audio. Can you hear that?
Yeah. Yeah, you're hearing the actual voice of Ishi there.
Wow, that's so cool. That is
Now,
too cool.
These wax recordings were pretty fragile. So over the years, the majority of those wax recordings were destroyed from heat, humidity, and things, environmental. But several of them survived and have now been digitized. There was even a movie. The movie camera, the movie making film cameras were new at that time. But there was actually a movie made of Ishi on the University of California, Berkeley campus, doing things to record his life, his culture. But that movie was lost to time. It was lost to, it deteriorated, sitting on the shelf in a non-temperature, non-humidity controlled environment. And the movie was destroyed. When they opened the canister up, it was just mush. That movie would have been pretty special to see.
That would have been pretty cool. This is pretty neat little space here on UCLA.edu's website here that we're sharing. It kind of shows the history, the timeline that you're kind of stepping us through here, Gene.
Yeah.
Just really cool. Very neat.
So let's go back to the people that were assigned to Ishi to ensure that he's taken care of. We have the anthropologist, we have the linguist, and we also have, very importantly, the medical doctor. Obviously, Ishi coming out of the Stone Age, we need to take care of him medically. So there was a pretty well-to-do, well-known, very successful doctor at the University of California, Berkeley by the name of Dr. Saxton Pope. Dr. Pope becomes Ishi's medical doctor. They have that doctor-patient relationship from 1911 through the rest of Ishi's life. Ishi passes, looking forward, Ishi passes in March of 1916 from tuberculosis. So in just 4 years and 7 months, this whole time period from the time he comes out of concealment, is captured in Oroville, and he passes away, is only 4 years and 7 months. And so much happens in that 4 years and 7 months. So Dr. Pope, picture of Dr. Pope
There he
there,
is, the man.
he has a doctor-patient relationship with Ishi. But Pope grew up in Texas. He probably had seen the bow and arrow from the local native populations. He had probably played around with a bow and arrow as a young man, as a boy, like we all do. But Pope, at that time in his life, was a surgeon. He was a doctor. He was a musician. He was also a magician, which we'll get into in a
No
future
way.
episode.
He's a
Yeah,
magician. That's
but he's
awesome.
not. He is not an archer. He's not a bow hunter yet. Pope is sitting in his office in early 1912. Remember, he's got the doctor-patient relationship with Ishi. He's had that for a few months now. Pope looks out his window onto the lawn of the campus and he sees Ishi, and Ishi had free reign. Ishi could leave, come walk downtown, come back anytime he wanted. Ishi's out on the lawn outside Pope's window shooting his bow and arrow. Pope looks out the window and sees this, leaves his office, goes down to Ishi, and he's intrigued.
Hmm.
And Ishi starts showing him the bow and he starts showing him how to shoot. This is Pope's introduction to the bow and arrow
Wow.
in the spring of 1912.
Man, how many sequences and series of events to lead to that moment is just mind blowing. I think you said
You
this in
know,
one of our very early podcasts where it was like when you actually look at space and time of all these individuals in their lives crossing paths, like space and time, one difference like would literally change the course of modern traditional bow hunting forever.
divine intervention, if when Ishi came down, if they had not been sympathetic, if they had not called the sheriff, if the sheriff had not talked to the newspapermen had not written the story, Waterman had not seen the story, Ishi could have just been a vagrant in a jail cell.
Mm-hmm.
All of this is, like divine intervention. This was meant to be. So Pope is now shooting with Ishi on the lawn of the campus there at the University of California. And Ishi's teaching Pope about the Yahi ways, Yahi archery, Yahi bows, Yahi arrows, Yahi points, Yahi hunting styles, getting close, calling and decoying. None of this 40 and 50-yard shooting.
Hmm.
Get them within feet by calling and decoying. This is what he's teaching Pope. Pope is really enamored with the bow and arrow, and he can't get enough of it. And they're becoming fast friends, and everybody says that Ishi and Pope were best friends.
Hmm.
Pope was Ishi's best friend. In 1914, Waterman and Kroeber, the two anthropologists, have an idea. Wouldn't it be interesting if we could take Ishi back up into the country where he grew up and let him go back there and revisit and tell us the stories
Hmm.
of those times before August 28th, 1911? Initially, Ishi doesn't like that idea. Ishi
Oh, no
is,
kidding.
no, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to go back up and revisit all those memories that are not good memories? Why would I want to go back and see where my family was killed?
Hmm.
Why would I want to go back to where I was starving? But they continually work on Ishi and finally convince him, let's go back. In 1914, they go back into the mountains. There's, I think one of the pictures shows a pack train going into the mountains. And Ishi goes from being hesitant, being resistant, to being, yeah, this is good.
Hmm.
This this is really, I needed this. Good medicine. So Ishi takes them back to all his old haunts. He takes them back and tells them stories. This is the pack train
Mm-hmm.
going back into Yahi country.
Look at how rugged that terrain is.
Look at how rugged that terrain is.
Wow. I mean, if you're
So
gonna
they
if
go
you're gonna
back and
hide somewhere undetected, that's the place to hide.
yeah, they go back and spend several weeks with Ishi back there, and Ishi's telling them stories. Ishi's taking them to places, um, and retelling the story of
Mm.
his youth, his whole life. He tells one story of where he killed a bear with his bow, and in his culture, a bear was a sacred animal. In many
Mm. Mm-hmm.
native cultures, a bear was a sacred animal. It wasn't sacred to you don't kill them, but it was sacred to you revere them, and
Right.
you instead of throwing away the bones, you bury the bones. You
Mm.
take care of them. So he killed a bear with his bow, and he had buried probably 40 years earlier, 30 years earlier, whatever. He had buried the skull of this bear. He took them back and he dug the skull up of the bear he killed. He had
No
been telling
way.
them the story. He took them back to the spot and remembered the spot where he
Amazing.
buried the skull and dug it up, and there it was. It was still there.
Wow.
He took them back to places where the massacres occurred. Um, there was no remnants of those massacres. You might think there would be bones and fragments of those who were killed that day, but apparently the Yahi, after those vigilantes had left, had removed all of the
Mm.
bodies and buried them, did whatever they did with their dead. But Ishi spent several weeks there with Pope. And in that picture, you see Pope, you see Krober, you see Ishi, and you see a young boy.
Mm-hmm.
The young boy is actually Saxton Pope Jr., Dr.
Mm.
Pope's son. And Dr. Pope's son, Saxton Jr., there on the left, he lived until somewhere in the 70s, maybe even 80s. And he was able to tell the stories
No way.
uh, of going back up in there with Ishi and his father.
Wow. What an adventure. Could you imagine being a young boy, teenager, and being able to
Yeah.
do this?
Yeah. And, Ishi would take him back and swim in the creeks with him. And
Mm.
it was, what a fascinating life that young man was able to live. So they spend several weeks of the summer of 1914 revisiting Ishi's life up in Ishi country, and they make plans to go back again that fall. But two things happened. One thing was Mount Lassen was an active volcano.
Mm.
Mount Lassen erupted after they left. That's the actual explosion of Mount
Okay.
Lassen.
That picture is it erupting after they got back.
Yeah. The other thing that happened was that Ishi started to develop a cough.
Mm.
They didn't know it yet, but it was the beginnings of his tuberculosis.
Mm.
Now, Ishi was a Stone Age man. Ishi had never been around white man culture. He had never been around white man disease. He got every sniffle that came along. And I still don't understand this. He ended up with tuberculosis, unsurprisingly. Dr. Krober's first wife had tuberculosis. Ishi would come visit Dr. Krober for dinner in 1912, 1913, and would spend the evening with Krober and his wife, who had active tuberculosis,
Mm.
having dinner, spending the night. Krober was a PhD anthropologist.
Right.
Wouldn't you think you would
Right.
you would insulate Ishi from your wife who has
Yeah.
active
You
tuberculosis?
would
And
think.
she actually passes away in 1913 of
Mm.
tuberculosis. Um, so trying to make sure I don't forget any stories of that time period. But so, okay, his cough begins in that late 1914. His cough worsens in 1915. They start treating him for tuberculosis. The first tests were negative. The tests at that time were not all that accurate. Later tests did show that he had active tuberculosis, so they knew his time was limited.
Mm.
In 1915, there's also the Pan-Pacific Exhibition going on. So this is one of those, again, segues, the right people in the right place at the right time. The Pan-Pacific Exhibition is going on in San Francisco in 1915. In the Pan-Pacific Exhibition is a Japanese archery exhibit.
Hmm.
Two people independently came to see the Japanese archery exhibit. One of those was Will Compton. The other was Art Young. They walk into the Pan-Pacific Japanese archery exhibit. Will Compton's standing there looking at this, and he looks over next to him and he sees this tall, muscled, athletic man standing there. And he says, "Hello, my name's Will Compton." The other man reaches over and says, "Hello, my name is Art Young." Compton says, "Do you like archery?" Art Young says, "Well, no, I've never shot a bow, but I'm very interested. Why don't you come with me and let's go visit this man Ishi, who's also here at the Pan-Pacific Exhibition. He was one of the shows at the exhibition."
Hmm.
So Compton and Young go see Ishi, and then they go back to University of California, Berkeley with Ishi to meet Pope.
No way.
Now we have
That's wild. That is so wild.
because of Ishi. Without Ishi, Pope would not have been introduced to the
Right.
bow and arrow. Without Ishi, Compton and Young would not have gone back to meet Dr. Pope. Ishi is the glue. Ishi is the reason for them getting together.
Wow.
And this is the birth. This is the evolution of,
This is
the
start.
genesis of our sport happens because of this man you're looking at right here.
Wow. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's incredible.
Ishi he's a celebrity while he's there at the museum. People are coming from all over the world to see this last wild man. And Ishi is able to communicate with them. Again, his vocabulary is, 400 to 500 words. He's able to communicate with people coming to visit him. He's able to welcome them. And another, I think, indicator of what kind of man he was whenever he was told, "We're going to have some visitors today, Ishi, and one of our visitors is a very important person. His name is Mr. Smith," and Ishi would make sure that he could remember and pronounce your name when he
Wow.
was introduced to you.
What a human.
"Hello, Mr. Smith, how are you?" It was very important for him to recognize you. It was very important for him to give you the recognition. This is a man who could not tell you his own name, but it was very important for him to know your name and be able to address you properly.
Amazing. Truly amazing.
Ishi was also, and this is one of those things that just, this man just makes me smile when I think of him.
I could tell. There's a soft spot about this individual and his story to you.
Remember, Ishi was probably being trained by the old man who was his uncle as a medicine man. Dr. Pope was a surgeon. Dr. Pope invented procedures during World War I that saved countless lives. Dr. Pope was one of the most well-known, well-respected surgeons in the country. Ishi was a medicine man from a lost tribe. Dr. Pope would allow Ishi to go into the operating room with him when he was performing surgeries.
No way.
And they would communicate, they would talk. And Ishi would give his advice on how to treat a patient, and Pope would do his medicine in today's modern medicine.
Yeah.
They were operating on a man one time, and Ishi said, "Why do you cut him open like that? We can treat him with these herbs and these medicines from nature. You don't need to cut him open and remove body parts." They were able to communicate professional to professional from Stone Age culture to modern medicine culture.
Amazing.
Ishi would walk around the hospital in a hospital attendant's gowns, and he would go in to visit patients by himself. He would walk into your room. You're a patient laying in the bed. Ishi would walk into your room, and he would stand there with his arms crossed, and he would look at you and not say a word, diagnosing you, and then he would leave, you know.
What a cool dude.
So
I bet he was a celebrity. I bet I bet everybody knew who this guy was.
Exactly, and they knew who he was, so no one was threatened.
Right.
When this man would walk into the room, because they knew Ishi, they knew his story. He was a celebrity, and it was just a thing, you know. Ishi walks into a room, diagnoses you, and walks out.
He's just doing his rounds, his medicine man rounds. Yeah.
Right.
Amazing. Incredible.
So Ishi gets tuberculosis now, and the disease progresses pretty rapidly. By the end of 1915, the end is near. This picture is Ishi shortly before his death. We saw the pictures of him 4 years and 7 months earlier when he was captured. He was emaciated. He was hungry, starved. This is Ishi 4 years and 7 months later, near death from tuberculosis. Pictures of him in between there. Look at the health.
I mean, he looks like a beast. He's a beast of a man.
He was a very muscled man. He was a specimen.
Yeah, comparing this picture to, his near-death
This is
picture.
1914.
Yeah.
That picture was 1914.
Right.
This picture is late 1915, early 1916.
So less than 2 years later, and he's
Less
half
than
his
2
weight.
years later.
Half his weight, easy.
Yeah. He's laying on his deathbed. Kroeber, the anthropologist, is in Europe. He's on a speaking tour in Europe. Waterman wires Kroeber and says the end is near. Kroeber desperately wants to get back to be with his friend Ishi before he passes, but he can't get there in time. So he sends instructions back to Waterman. We will respect his culture. We will not do an autopsy. Ishi must be buried according to his cultural practices. Ishi dies. The telegram doesn't get back to the museum in time. Dr. Pope, Ishi's best friend in all the world, he's still a medical doctor. He performs the autopsy. He writes a book afterwards, The Medical History of Ishi, about his time with Ishi from a medical point of view and also from the autopsy. What they didn't say at the time was they also removed his brain. That would certainly have been against Ishi's wishes. But in the name of science, I'll back up a little bit. Kroeber was very adamant autopsy would not be performed. He said in his telegram, "Science be damned. We will honor his wishes and not cut him up." Pope doesn't get the note in time, does the autopsy. Now, I want to interject here also something back to the character of the man. Some examples of that. When Ishi was taken to the train station in 1911, put on the train from Oroville back to San Francisco, dressed in the straw hat, the suit, thrown into the San Francisco culture overnight. 3 years later, in 1914, when he comes back from that time in the mountains with Pope and Pope Jr., showing them around, telling them his life story in the mountains, he comes back and they get on the train, the same train station that he had been to 3 years earlier. There's a crowd of people there to see Ishi. By 1914, Ishi's fame is worldwide. A crowd of people come to the train station there in 1914 to tell Ishi goodbye. They're taking him back to University of California, Berkeley, leaving Oroville. Ishi gets on the train, opens the window, sticks his head out the window. A crowd of people filled the platform. These are the same people who were killing his people just 3 years earlier, 5 years earlier, massacring his people. These same people are now on the train platform to see him, wish him well as he leaves from the 1914 trip. He lowers the window, sticks his head out the window, and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, goodbye."
No kidding.
The character of the man,
right?
Thank you, goodbye, my adoring friends. He's laying on his deathbed now, a year and a half later. Pope is his attending physician. Pope is his best friend. They have spent the last 4 years and 7 months almost being together almost every day. Ishi is in his last breaths, looks up at Dr. Pope and says, "You stay, I go." They had no word for goodbye. I'll see you in the next world.
Yeah.
His way of telling his best friend, "I'm going." He says, "You stay, I go." Many years later, there was an article written of that same title, "You Stay, I Go," that was published by Bear Archery.
Oh, no kidding.
But I think the character of the man, again, can be seen in those two stories right there. No vengeful, no hate, accepting, learning, becoming a useful part of his new culture, teaching people about his life, learning about a new life, and never exhibiting any remorse or any hate or any vengeful acts of any kind.
What a human.
Okay. So now Ishi is dead. Ishi has been autopsied. Ishi's brain has been removed. Ishi's brain is sent to the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. Because there is a professor there at the Smithsonian who is collecting brains from around the world. He is collecting brains from all the different civilizations and all the different cultures that he can find around the world to study the differences in the brain makeup and their intellect.
Interesting.
Is there any correlation that we can draw
Hmm.
in how these brains relate to their culture, their society, their intellect? So, University of California sends Ishi's brain to Smithsonian Institution. This is 1916. In 1989, there was a law passed, George Bush signed, the Native American Repatriation Act. There's a longer name, but that's a short version of it. If a tribe asked for remains to be returned, repatriated, you must do that.
Hmm.
Bones in museums. There were private collections with bones of Native Americans. If the tribe asked for those remains to be repatriated, you had to do it. It was now a federal law. There were no more Yahi, but there was a cousin tribe nearby that knew Ishi's remains had been cremated and put into an urn and put into a mausoleum there in California. You've got a picture of
I do. I'll bring it up
the
here.
urn. Now, what Ishi would have preferred was his remains would have been put in a ceramic jar, but there were no ceramic jars available. So they had this metal urn. They took Ishi's remains without the brain because it had already been sent to the Smithsonian. They put it in here and they put a cement plug in there to keep the ashes in the urn. And then the urn was put into the mausoleum with a glass window front, and you could walk by. Up until 1989, you could go into that mausoleum and you could see Ishi's remains through that glass front. When the tribe asked for Ishi's remains back, they gave them back. The tribe took them back into the mountains there in Ishi country, Deer Creek, Mill Creek area, and they needed to get the ashes out of this urn, so they broke open the cement plug. Inside the urns were indeed the ashes, some bone chips, some obsidian flakes, and extremely interesting, a note, a piece of paper folded up inside the urn. Now, this is where I think this is so cool. What did they do with that piece of paper? 99 out of 100 people would have opened it up and read it. They realized that piece of paper was written by somebody close to Ishi because they were able to put it in the urn after the cremation.
Sure.
It must have been somebody really close to Ishi. Whatever they wrote was between Ishi and that person. None of my business. So they buried the note with the ashes.
No kidding.
Never opened it. Now, my speculation, and I think I'm right,
I think I'm right.
that was Dr. Pope's note. Dr. Pope and Ishi were best friends. Dr. Pope wrote Ishi a goodbye on that piece of paper and put it in that urn before it was sealed. Speculation is, remember, Ishi was not his real name. We called him Ishi because that was the Yahi word for man. Speculation is, and I think this has some merit to it, is that Ishi told Pope his real name. They were close enough. They were best friends. They became so close as brothers that Ishi did tell Pope his name. But Pope never betrayed that confidence. But that letter, I like to think, was written by Dr. Pope to Ishi.
Amazing.
That's a pretty cool
That is a pretty
angle
cool.
to the
Yes,
story.
I love that.
Now we go on, Pope goes on to do quite a lot of adventure hunting with his bow and arrow. Young becomes Pope's new best friend. Compton is a big part of the trio. They hunt for the next several years across the world: Africa, Alaska, Yellowstone Park, writing their stories about hunting with the bow and arrow. Ishi is the one that got them into hunting with the bow and arrow. Pope dies in 1926, shortly after he comes back from his hunt in Africa. Art passes in 1935 from a ruptured appendix. Compton passes in 1938 of heart failure. But from 1916 until the last of them pass in 1938, they carry on the legacy that Ishi gave them. Art Young introduces a young man by the name of Fred Baird to the bow and arrow. We'll go more into that story later.
Oh, yeah.
Fred Baird, Glenn St. Charles become best friends. Glenn St. Charles and Fred Baird had, without a doubt, the most influence on the most people in our time period, in our era, through their writings, through their movies, their TV shows, and getting us introduced into the sport of bow hunting. Ishi's legacy throughout the life of Pope, Young, and Compton, Glenn St. Charles, and eventually you and I, it all leads back to this man by the name of Ishi. Now, I really want to finish the story. There's a whole book. Remember, they removed his brain during the autopsy and sent it to the Smithsonian. There's a whole book, Ishi's Brain. From 1916 until 1989, people had forgotten that the Smithsonian had the brain. Actually, most people didn't know. Surely it must have been in when they buried Ishi. It must have been there when they put him in the urn, when they cremated him. I know my puppy just came in. So from 1916 to 1980.
What's your dog's name?
Abby.
Hi, Abby.
She's 8 months old.
Cute as a button.
So in 1989, when they do the Native American Repatriation Act and they take the ashes back and they bury them, they find the story of the brain being removed, and they find the story that it was sent to the Smithsonian, and the Smithsonian denies having it. Probably because they knew it would not be good press. But those people who got the remains of Ishi kept on the Smithsonian until they got to one person who knew where the brain was. He knew it was in the brain room. They called it the wet room. They actually had a wet room where all these brains were stored in jars, and they found Ishi's brain.
No kidding.
And this few members of this tribe went to Washington, D.C., went to the Smithsonian, got the jar with the brain in it, flew it back to California as carry-on bag.
No way.
And took it back up into the mountains where the ashes were and buried it with the
No
ashes.
kidding. That is too cool.
So Ishi is now together
Together.
in his homeland, buried, we like to think, as he would have wanted.
Wow. What a story. You did great. Again, Gene. Hammered it out.
It's a story that there's so much to it.
There's so
many
much. There's
things
so much to it.
you could spend days going through all the different stories and pieces of the stories and the angles of the stories, and it's just every book you read is fascinating. So I encourage people, if you like the story of Ishi, if you like the history of the bow, if you want to know where we came from, how we got to where we are, you've got to start with the story of Ishi.
Sure. Man, I learned so much today. This was awesome. So informative, Gene.
Well, you know, what could we do to honor the life of somebody like Ishi,
Hmm.
but to tell his story so he's not forgotten and to honor the man, the legacy, the contributions that he made that allowed us to do what we do over 100 years later.
Hmm. Amazing. What an amazing individual. And just through his eyes, I just can't even fathom coming off of that mountain, being found in that stable, and then being introduced to the life after that. Within days, you're in a movie theater, you're getting on a train, you're taking car rides, you're in a museum, you're now making money and experiencing ice cream. And I mean, just you basically went from a solo survivor of your tribe to a world renowned celebrity in a matter of weeks. Incredible.
And all of this happened in just 4 years and 7 months.
Unbelievable.
What could we have learned from Ishi if he could have lived longer?
Right.
There's so much that we learned from him, but there's so much that he took with him.
For sure. But I think there's a little bit of romanticism behind that.
Yeah.
The mystery kind of it's appropriate.
Well, a sad story in many ways,
Yes.
but in many ways, we're very fortunate
Hmm.
that it was Ishi and not somebody else.
Right.
Would someone else have been able to do what Ishi did? Would anyone else have been able to live through what he lived through and come out and be able to contribute to society like he did?
Yeah, I think that's a really good angle to look at this. It's being the last surviving person of your tribe and living solo for that long as well, and just having that survival mentality. Like how many people, if he wasn't the last, if somebody else was the last, if he would have got caught up in one of the massacres and driven into one of the caves, maybe there was no last person of the Yahi tribe to get discovered, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing. He was a survivor.
Well, fascinating story.
Super
And again,
fascinating.
I really, really, really encourage people, go out on eBay, Google Abe books. There's a lot of sources. These books have been reprinted. There's PBS documentaries. There's a really good PBS documentary on Ishi that tells the story, has the voice recordings.
Hmm.
There was a movie made about Ishi, Last of His Tribe. Eh, it's Hollywood. It's not so good.
Yeah,
But there's some really good source material out there about the man.
it's awesome. So, Gene, where do we go from here? What's up next? What can the listeners and
I
viewers
think
be excited about?
logically next, yeah, I think logically next we got to go to Dr. Pope. Dr. Pope is the next stepping stone from
Hmm.
Ishi. We went through the Thompson brothers. There was a period of time where Archery, yeah, kind of went to sleep for a little while, and then here comes along Ishi, and Ishi gives Pope and Young and Compton the incentive, the motivation to get out there with their bows and arrows. Pope writes the book Hunting with the Bow and Arrow in 1923. A lot of what he writes about in that book in 1923, he learned from Ishi.
Hmm.
He tells a lot of stories in there about the time he spent with Ishi. That book was the instigator for people like Doug Easton to get into archery. Doug Easton is injured in a small game hunting accident with a shotgun. Doug Easton spends a lot of time in the hospital. Somebody gives Doug Easton Pope's book to read in his recovery, and that motivates Doug Easton to get into archery.
Wow.
So many people, you look back over history at the people, Roy Case, who their fire was lit by that book, Hunting with the Bow and Arrow, 1923, by Dr. Saxton Pope. Dr. Pope has got to be the next step in the journey.
I love it. Now, do you see Pope's story being a singular episode, or do we tie in Art Young Chief Compton into that?
I think we could probably do Pope, Young, Compton, the trio,
Okay.
in the time that we have. And then we can start, after that, we can start to go into some more of the more modern
Mm-hmm.
contemporaries.
Yep.
I like to think Roy Case is somebody worth a deep dive on.
Yep.
Um, I think Aldo Leopold, again, I've said this earlier, is somebody that deserves a deep dive. But I think we can just build an agenda along the way.
Beautiful. I
And
love
I
it.
think, again, we said this. I think people should be reaching out to you or me and making suggestions. What would you like to
Absolutely.
hear?
Please
Of
do.
course,
Yeah.
Fred Bear. Of course, Fred Bear. Of course, Glenn St. Charles.
Howard Hill.
Yeah, Howard Hill. But,
Mhm.
who else would you
Who
like to
else?
hear about?
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. Shoot us an email at thepusharchery@gmail.com or shoot Gene an email at Gene.
Gene at archerycollecting.com.
There you go. Shoot over your suggestions. We're open. We want to let this thing be a living, breathing series, if you will. So we're open to suggestions for sure.
Yep.
Awesome.
Again, thanks for giving a forum for this, Matt.
Heck yeah.
Uh,
Thanks for your time.
I think, for the feedback you're getting and the feedback I'm getting, I think people are interested. I think people are hungry for more history about our sport. And I think it's for a lot of reasons, but I think people, especially traditional bow hunters, we feel we're a part of the sport. It's not
100%.
something we do, it's something we are.
I love that.
Uh, and I think, if you're so deep into the bow and arrow, if you're so deep into hunting with the bow and arrow that you're going to hunt with a longbow or a recurve or a self bow, then you cannot help but be attracted to the history of where we came from and how did we get to where we are and why did this happen.
Absolutely. It's awesome. Well, why don't you let the listeners know where they can find you? Look some stuff up, what you got going on.
Well, I think if you want to follow along on Facebook, uh, Gene Hopkins, GeneHopkins. There's more than one, but you'll see my picture on there. I also have an archery collecting page on Facebook, and then on Instagram, Gene Hopkins 3448.
Perfect.
And please think about coming to the Compton Traditional Bowhunters Rendezvous, June 18 to 21 in Noblesville, Indiana. It's our first time in Indiana to have the rendezvous after 25 years in Michigan, but I'll be there. Typically at the rendezvous, I bring a big part of my collection and set up. This year, I'm not able to do that, partly because, hey, I'm responsible for all the vendors at the rendezvous, so I'm kind of busy this year, but also
Got a few things going on.
at at the at Berrien Springs when we were there, we had the big concrete block building I could put my collection in. This year in Indiana, we don't have the building. Next year in Indiana, we'll have a brand new building that I can bring my collection and set up.
Awesome. Looks like
But
we
I'll be
got a
there.
lot of
I'd
lot
love
of
to.
speakers there as well. Brian Burkhart's speaking at it. Mike Mitten, Kevin Barr. Looks like you guys have a ton of stuff going on at this awesome event.
It's such a the fun of the Compton Rendezvous. The speakers are a big part of it. The vendors are a big part of it. But the thing you'll come away with appreciating the most are the people. Just the people you meet while you're walking around. You walk through the campground, people will have a campfire going. They'll be cooking over the campfire. They'll say, "Hey buddy, come on over and sit down, eat with me." You've never seen this person before in your life, and they're inviting you to have dinner, cooking over the campfire with them. It's the people. It's
It's
all about
awesome.
the people.
So great. Well said. Gene, thanks for your time, man. Couldn't do this without you. You're so good at this. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Matt. Again, we'll talk more down the road.
Absolutely. All right. Stay on the line, listeners. While you're checking out all of Gene's stuff on Instagram, on Facebook, head on over to thepusharchery.com. Serves as a portal to the Push Archery Center of Knowledge. Tons of amazing online courses helping you with this beautiful sport. As well as on our website, we have our hats, arm guards, accessories, and our best-in-class made in America quivers, the Ridge Runner, the Alpha Pack, and the Delta Pocket Quiver. Hope you guys are enjoying this History of the Bow series. We've got Ishi under our belts, onward to Pope, Young, and Chief Compton. Okay, guys, we love you. Get primal.